Welcome guys to my video log about the Arcane cannon build I designed for the Wizard class in Diablo 3. It is an Inferno based farming guide which will also help you progress through Inferno if you have problems with the normal Blizzard Hydra shock build which seems to be the cookie cutter build nowadays. I have also written a text guide which is very compact to read on the diablofans.com forum, and I will put a link in the description of this video so you can read it while you're watching the video or after it. And also I am very open to discussing the build and varying about gear choices, alternative skill sets or whatsoever. So I will start off with my skill set, because I really think the skill set is the bane of any build. If you have skills, you will then design and buy your gear accordingly to the skills you've chosen, and also the same goes for your follower and your playstyle. So to start off, the core of this build, this Arcane Cannon build, is not surprisingly the Arcane Orb skill. I use Tap the Source so I can spam it more, but Arcane Orb is really, I guess it's about the strongest spell you can get for a wizard if you're talking in terms of weapon damage. It does a lot of percent weapon damage, which will really add up with the amount of critical hit damage you will get when you gear up. And critical hit damage and critical hit percent is one of the real DPS increasing stats that everybody is stacking, and it seems to be one of the strongest stats nowadays if your gear is progressing through Inferno level. So Arcane Orb, as said, it is a skill that is compared to the cookie cutter shock pulse, which is the most popular damage skill for wizards, spammable damage skill for wizards next to Blizzard, I believe, and I've used them a lot as well. But Arcane Orb is a lot slower, but because of that you can really increase the damage done per cast. It is not slow because it casts slower, but it is slow because it costs arcane power. So if you are smart and you want to exploit the resource management on Arcane Orb, you can go and buy a cheap two-hander like the one I'm showing now, and yeah, you equip it basically. And your damage may go a little bit down compared to a one-hander and offhand combination you might have now, but for like 300k you can get a real good two-hander with a lot of damage and maybe even a socket, and you socket it with critical hit damage, and you will really literally be blasting out anything you see. Because if Arcane Orb crits with a bit of critical hit damage, it will crit for a lot, because the percentage weapon damage it is using is really high for if you compare it to other skills per cast. So it might cost a little bit of arcane power, and as you see with a two-hander it goes very slow, but you can do a lot of burst damage for almost no gold, which is what you want to achieve, to do as much damage possible for as less gold you have to pay. As your gear progresses, you will probably go for the one-hander and offhand combination, because a source will really add a lot to your damage, but you need the arcane power per crit, and you will be stacking crit in this build, so that's not a problem. But those weapons and orbs will be really expensive. I got this one for free for somebody I helped killing Asmodan and something in Act 4, so that's really nice. But that's maybe because the build is so strong you can carry people who don't seem to progress, so that's something nice. The one-hander is not optimal, as you see. You would ideally go for a wand with some arcane power and crit, so you can really spam those arcane orbs as a madman, while not really depleting your resources. So back to the build. Next to Arcane Orb, one of the most important skills in my opinion is, well, it's not a skill, it's passive skill, is Temporal Flux. Your Arcane Orbs will slow for a bit. While you may not be casting a lot of them, it is really nice to have a slow. From my experience, a slow does break to some amount, to some extent, charges and fast moving mobs, so it really adds up and just eases your kiting, which is what every range class is doing in Inferno anyways, because mobs will still hit you for a lot even after the nerf. Because mobs will hit you for a lot anyways, you get Glass Cannon, which is really a staple passive, because it doesn't really decrease your armor and resistance by a lot, but gives you more damage than that, and damage is what you want to be doing as a range class. I'm also using Astral Presence, but I wouldn't recommend this skill per se. I would say you can get, there are a lot of choices obviously, but you could get Critical Mass to decrease the cooldown on Arcane and Teleport, which I will be talking on later about. I've used it a lot with my two-hander, but Critical Mass doesn't really proc a lot if you're spamming slow Arcane Orbs. But yeah, it's a nice skill to have in my opinion. If you're decreasing your cooldowns, it's always good. For that reason, you could also go for Evocation. It's a matter of opinion and a matter of how is your gear designed. If you have a lot of possibilities to crit, you would want to go with Critical Mass. If you don't have a lot of opportunities to crit and proc the Critical Mass effect, you should go for Evocation. So Galvanizing Ward is always a nice filler if you are going for life per second. It's a really nice skill. Also, Illusionist is something that will really work if you're not maybe not so familiar with teleport, or you just like to stand in the heat of the fight and then teleport out every time it's possible. So you can just spam teleport whenever you need it with this passive, which is really good. But if you don't need it, if you don't find yourself needing to teleport every other second you get hit, then the skill is not as useful in my opinion, and you would rather get Astral Presence so you can spam your skills easily. And with a one-hander and offhand, you will be casting more Arcane Orbs, which do cost a lot of Arcane power, so this skill is really nice for that. Some other options, if you for some reason use Blizzard, as far as I know, Cold-Blooded is bugged in a way that you will deal damage to chilled and frozen targets. The damage is increased, no matter if it's cold damage or arcane damage. As far as I know, that's a bug now, but I've not been abusing it, and they will probably fix it someday soon. But basically, any passive is okay. Just blur, it's good to any passive that will help you in your build anyway, and more than half of these passives will help you, are viable choices. A next skill that I like to put in almost any build I play as a wizard is Hydra. I've been starting out with this build using Arcane Hydra, because I thought, hey, Temporal Flux, it slows anything I hit with Arcane damage, so why not use an Arcane Hydra? So it permanently slows anything, because my Arcane Orbs were really slow when I use my two-hander, so I might not be permanently slowing everything when I'm not casting as much Arcane Orbs with my slow two-hander. So Arcane Hydra was a really good choice. But then I realized Venom Hydra just does a lot more damage. So if you just want to farm and do a lot of damage, Venom Hydra is really the baller DPS skill you want to use, because it's insane how much damage you will do for just 15 arcane power every 15 seconds. It's sick, and it stacks on itself. It's awesome. And if you tend to get like in any wizard build that uses Hydra, if you can get the mobs you're attacking to stand longer in the pool, slow them inside it, or teleport around it, run around it, they will really get a lot of damage for you do nothing actually. But Arcane Hydra is still an okay choice if you need to slow for, say, fast unicorns in the unicorn level. It's really viable. It will just lengthen your battles, but you will be somewhat safer. It's like the Arcane Blizzard, see it like that. But Blizzard being stronger, but costing more arcane power. So it's a fair choice, if you ask me. The next skill I would like to discuss is Energy Armor, also a staple skill for almost any wizard build in Inferno. And there are, in my opinion, three options you can choose to if it goes. If we talk about the runes, the first one is Force Armor. It is basically, it was really, yeah, it was the first thing you would choose pre-nerf before every monster did more damage than it does now, but it nerfed the incoming damage you will receive. So yeah, basically if your resistances are high enough and you feel that you're not getting one-shotted or two-shotted, you can go for prismatic armor. And even if I fight Diablo, I find prismatic armor like stronger than force armor, because Diablo doesn't basically one-shot me, and increasing my resistances will increase my resilience against fire and shit, and something elite mobs will throw a lot at you. Fire, frost damage, arcane damage. It really just helps a lot against basically anything. The other viable skill is Pinpoint Barrier, which is, yeah, just a DPS increase, and not by just a mere 5 critical hit percent. You would say that's not really a lot. But if you're building up your gear and you're just starting Act 1 or 2, the 5% critical hit can really increase your damage by a lot, because maybe you just have 10 or 15% crit because you can't afford a nice pair of rings with critical hit percent. So you get the skill and you just get like basically 2 free items with critical hit damage, while still having the option to equip items. So it's awesome, and it will really help you proccing your Arcane Orb crits, who are the bane of this build, so you can deal a lot of damage. And even my gear is not awesome, but it's okay. I'm still using this rune if I find myself just wanting to blow through everything and I'm not dying anyways. It's the best choice if you're not dying. So you should always consider it next to Force Armor and Prismatic Armor. The next skill, I really like it a lot, is Magic Weapon. It's basically a filler, because we aim for high damage, so why not get Magic Weapon and some free damage? It's the same as Pinpoint Barrier. It doesn't do a lot, but it just gives you a free item, see it like that. And yeah, I don't know how much the passive effect procs, but I've been seeing a real high amount of knockbacks or stuns with Arcane Orb, which is also being discussed on the forum, on the guide I made. It seems so that if you deal a high amount, enough damage per hit, you will mini stun the mobs you're attacking. So it seems so that Arcane Orb, when used with a lot of critical hit damage, deals enough damage to put out a mini stun on the mobs, and this will really ease in your kiting. But it may also be the Force Weapon proc, which like scales with damage. I don't know, but Force Weapon is really a good skill, and if your gear is like insane, you don't really need it, and you could go for something else like Blizzard or whatever you prefer. But I have been liking it a lot in a lot of my builds, and also in this one, because we really want to go for high damage. The next skill is Teleport. It is like next to Energy Armor, our defensive skill. And yeah, also this skill I've been using in the most builds on my wizard throughout Inferno. Mostly I've been using Fracture, which just it's a skill that gives you, yeah, basically mini tanks for you for a few seconds. They seem to get a lot of hits, maybe even more hits than you would survive. They can survive it for a few seconds, so that's really nice. And the mobs will stand, most of the time they will stand still and attacking your decoys, which is, it's really good. But lately I've been using Wormhole. The reason to use Wormhole, it's basically the same as Fracture, because you want to get no damage and you want to escape from shit, or you want, yeah, and Wormhole does that as well, but in my opinion it's a bit more versatile, because instead of having your decoys to tank the damage for you, which is still a random number generated thingy, because not every monster will just attack your decoys, they might still go for you. Wormhole just gets you out of the trouble, and because of Arcane Orb having this nice travel time and being able to travel really far, you can just teleport all the way back to where you came from, or in front of the elites. It doesn't matter. You just teleport away and you shoot some arcane orbs on them. And when they get to you, you run a bit back. You run a bit back. When your wormhole is back on, you don't even need illusionist for that. That's why I'm not using that passive anymore. You can just teleport upon them and then back again. So you can just guide them away with just wormhole, which is really good. And fracture, yeah, it's good, but also wormhole does a really good job at defeating Diablo. So why not just use it all the time if you're farming high axe anyways? The last skill may be frowned upon, but I really enjoy using the skill, and it increases your farming speed by an insane amount. It's Arcane. Arcane is basically, yeah, I like to call it Protoss form because you really look like Protoss Arcane. It's simple as that, but Arcane just increases your damage while you're in it. But apart from that, you can also tank more hits because you have increased armor and resistances, which stack with your prismatic armor if you use it from energy armor. And that's some nice synergy you want to have. Temporal Flux makes every bit of arcane damage slow the mobs you attack. So if you're in arcane form, you just slow everything, and you deal a lot of damage because the disintegrate you get deals 300% weapon damage, which is even more than Arcane Orb. But it attacks for a few ticks per second, and the explosion is just a free damage skill as well. And the left mouse button, I don't know what it's called, but that one can crit for like 300k with just mediocre gear. It's insane. It has a bit of casting time, but the damage you will put out in Arcane form, it's unsurpassed. And yeah, you can just run through entire acts in Arcane form for minutes after minutes and just kill anything. If you have some movement speed, you can basically do half an act in Arcane form. If you just see monsters, it's not about you having trouble, but it's about you need more monsters to kill to be faster. It's the other way around. So it really evens up stuff you are farming, and also because of the damage decrease you're getting from, because your resilience increase, your resistances, and your armor. It is a good skill to fight elite packs as well. You can basically tank more hits than normally, so it's awesome in my opinion. But it's maybe not as advisable if your gear is really bad, because then you just want to be as far away as possible. But I think it's a great skill to have, and it synergizes with a lot of the rest of your skills. And if you use the critical mass skill as said, your crits inside Arcane form will reduce the cooldown outside your Arcane form. So you get a double amount of cooldown reduction because Arcane form lasts longer if you kill shit. And if you crit on stuff, you reduce the cooldown as well. So it's awesome. Now back to the gear. The gear I've been using, it's not as hard to like gear up as it was before, because before you had some choices. Will I get attack speed? Will I get critical hit damage? And they nerfed attack speed so much that well, maybe other builds as before are viable as well, because they are not as bad as the other option, which relied on attack speed. But this one, yeah, it's still, you stack critical hit percent and critical damage, and you just blow shit up. That's basically it. So what you see is just stable, some intellect. This helm is really nice. It always has some attack speed and critical hit chance. You can get it for not too much gold. And yeah, mine doesn't even have defenses, but my other items do, so it's fine. And amulets like these, you can use them on any class that wants to deal damage, so it's fine. So just get some intellect, vitality, defensive stats like all resist, armor, life region, doesn't matter, and some critical hit percent and critical hit damage. And as you see, I don't even have optimal gear in a lot of slots. I mean, this could have, the 20% extra gold could have been like 20% extra crit damage, and then they wouldn't, yeah, they might have been a bit expensive, but not really high, because you can get like 10 critical hit chance or 8 on your gloves without breaking a sweat. So I can do a lot of upgrades even though I'm farming the entire game. So, and there are a lot of cheap choices for this build, because you can get these boots which do a good job at helping you out kiting and add a lot to your damage. But you could also get some parts of the NA set, um, which depends. If I reckon correctly, they give you critical hit damage and attack speed, or critical hit percent and attack speed as well, so it's awesome. And as said, I have discussed the weapons before, but just get some arcane power per crit if you're using one-hander and a sword. If you're using a two-hander, you get a lot of critical hit damage, so you can blast the shit out of stuff you encounter. But the last point I want to discuss about my gear choices, build choices, and the skill set is a scoundrel. In my opinion, it's the best option if you want to farm without abusing magic find, because then you would use the Templar with his shield, which is basically an extra slot for magic find. Is the scoundrel. He's really good if you use a cold bow. I think this could be nerfed in the near future, because in my opinion it's kinda insane that you give your follower a cold bow, and as you see I also gave him a bow with a bit of chance to do something. You can get chance to slow, chance to freeze, chance to fear, whatever. Just some harder CC than just the cool damage, and you add up multi-shot, and yeah, he will just slow anything. So he's a walking blizzard bot, which is insane. And because of the advantage, he won't die as much. I gave him a lot of vitality, so yeah, he survives. This didn't cost me a lot, and yeah, this is nice too. It's free damage, and if your critical hit chance is so high that it like hits the roof, you can go for this one, so you get even more damage. So it's awesome. Scoundrel really does a lot in terms of damage, adding damage to you, and enabling more kiting options. So I would recommend him, unless you're farming with magic find, then get the Templar, because he adds magic find, which is what you want. So basically this was my explanation about the build when it comes to the gear choices, the skill set, and also the follower. So I will be adding some gameplay after this part of the video, and yeah, it's really not hard to try and use this build. Just try it. You might have to get used to the slow casting time if you start off with a two-hander. But yeah, why not get used to something that's really good and like helps you clear the entire game, because that's what I'll be doing. So I wish you good luck. You can discuss this guide in the comments under the video, or just in the forum link that I sent to you. And yeah, if you liked it a lot, just like the video or subscribe. I would be pleased if you do that. Thank you and peace out.